Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're heading down south to New Orleans, to a place that's beautiful, historic, and, oh yeah, pretty terrifying.
It's hard to top the Lolori mansion for sheer creepiness.
That's for sure. So this mansion, it looks stunning from the outside, but once you get a peek behind the facade, well, let's just say it's got a really dark history. And that's what our deep dive today is all about.
Yeah, we're using your source materials here to really explore what happened there, the stories, the people who suffered, and how it still impacts the city today.
And I think what really sticks with you is this clash between the mansion's beauty on the outside and just the pure horror of what went on inside.
Absolutely. It's like this physical embodiment of duality.
Right.
New Orleans itself has this vibrant culture, but also a very dark past.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about Delphine Lolori, the woman at the heart of it all. She was a socialite back in the 1830s, but behind that charm, she was a cruel, sadistic person.
It's really a fascinating psychological puzzle, isn't it?
Totally. Like, how can someone be so charming and so ruthless at the same time?
Yeah, was it just the times? Slavery was accepted then? Or was there something more, something deeper going on with her?
And the sources, they describe some truly horrific acts, beatings, mutilations, even experiments. It's almost unbelievable that no one knew for so long.
Yeah, that's what's so haunting about it, right? Like, what kind of power and silence allowed this to happen right there in plain sight among New Orleans's elite?
It's baffling. So then we have the fire of 1834. That's when it all came out.
Yeah, a turning point. Like, fate intervened. The fire itself was an accident, but it exposed everything that was hidden.
And they found a cook chained to the stove. Right.
Yes. The sources say she started the fire to escape. She was willing to risk her own life.
Oh my gosh, that's just awful. But that discovery was nothing compared to what they found in the attic.
Oh, the attic. A nightmare, truly. A hidden torture chamber. It was like something out of a horror movie.
I read in one newspaper article, they said victims were found suspended by the neck with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other.
It's just unimaginable. It's a stark reminder of what humans are capable of, especially under a system like slavery.
The New Orleans Bee article you provided, it was hard to even read. It was so graphic.
Yeah.
So with everything that was found, surely Lolori was brought to justice, right?
Well, not quite. That's where it gets even weirder. She escaped.
Escaped?
Yep. Disappeared. The sources aren't clear on exactly how, but it seems like she fled New Orleans, maybe Alabama, France even. We don't know for sure.
Wow. So Lolori got away, but the mansion was still there. What happened to it after that?
Well, it didn't just stay empty. It went through a lot of changes, like the city was trying to figure out what to do with it. It was a school, a music conservatory, even a home for the homeless for a bit.
It's like it couldn't escape its past no matter what it was used for.
Exactly. There are all these stories about the people who lived there afterward having terrible luck. Financial ruin, mental breakdowns, strange illnesses, you name it.
Almost like a curse.
Right. Like the pain and suffering just soaked into the walls.
Now, speaking of curses, didn't Nicolas Cage own this place at one point? I feel like I remember hearing that.
Yeah, in the early 2000s, he bought it. He was really interested in its history, thought he could use it as inspiration for a horror novel.
Ironic, right? Given the mansion's reputation, did he ever finish that book?
Nope. Lost the property to foreclosure in 2009. He said later that he didn't get too far with the novel. Even Hollywood couldn't conquer the Lolori mansion, I guess.
So it's more than just a spooky story then.
Definitely. There's a lot more to uncover here, especially when it comes to the paranormal activity that's been reported there.
Okay, yeah. Let's get into that. I want to hear all about those ghost stories. What have people seen and heard in that place?
All right, so let's get into the paranormal side of things here. It's really interesting how the mansion's history has kind of, blended with all these ghost stories.
Yeah, so what kind of paranormal activity are we talking about here? Give me this spooky details. What have people actually experienced in that house?
Well, the reports they're all over the place. But a lot of people talk about hearing, like, unsettling sounds. Screams, moans, chains dragging, stuff like that.
Ugh. Yeah, no thanks. Sounds like the kind of stuff that would keep me up at night. I can see how those sounds would really feed into the whole haunted reputation.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a place that gets your imagination going. And it's not just sounds. Some people say they've smelled burning flesh.
Okay, that's pretty disturbing, especially given what we know happened there. It's like the mansion itself is like holding on to those memories. But what about ghost sightings? Has anyone actually seen anything like, Lolori's victims? Or even Madame Lolori herself.
Oh yeah, there are definitely stories about that too. Some people say they've seen a large black man in chains, probably one of her victims, forever trapped there.
That's so sad to think of them still there, suffering.
It makes you wonder about trauma, and if it can actually linger in a place. And then there are the sightings of a white woman, really intense eyes. People think it's Delphine Lolori's ghost.
Wait, hold on. People have seen her ghost. That's terrifying. What happened? Did they interact with her?
It depends on the story. Sometimes it seems like she's, well, malevolent. Back when the mansion was a girls' school, there were stories of like a woman grabbing students, leaving scratches, almost like she was still tormenting people.
Oh, that's awful. It's like she never left. But you said not all the encounters were bad, right?
Yeah, some people describe like playful spirits or at least less threatening ones. Makes you wonder if maybe the energy has shifted over time. Maybe the victim's spirits have found some peace.
I like that thought. Like maybe there can be healing, even in a place with so much darkness.
It's a hopeful idea, but we got to remember these are just stories, passed down, changed over time.
True, true. I mean, it's like those ghost hunting shows. People go in expecting to find something, and, well, they usually do.
Right. The Lolori Mansion, it's like a blank slate for people's fears, Whether or not you believe in ghosts, the story makes you think about the dark side of humanity and how it all just sticks around.
So even if we put the ghost stories aside, what can we actually learn from this place? What does all this tell us about ourselves, about history, about how we deal with the past?
It's a really good question. I mean, on one hand, it's a monument to the horrors of slavery,
Right.
a physical reminder of the cruelty and the injustice. It shows how much the past still affects us today.
Absolutely. It should make us uncomfortable, make us think about our own biases and the systems that still exist.
But then there's also this fascination with the macabre, that dark side of human nature, the fact that we're still so captivated by this story that it's in books and movies and, yeah, even our deep dive here, it tells us something about ourselves.
Yeah, we're horrified, but also kind of drawn to it. Maybe we need to face the darkness to understand ourselves better.
Maybe it's about confronting our own mortality, the good and the bad that we're all capable of. The Lolori Mansion, it's like this mirror, the beauty, the horror, history, and the present, all mixed up. Even the line between real and supernatural gets blurred.
It's definitely a place that makes you think. And it leaves us with more questions than answers. It's a historical landmark, sure, but it's also a ghost story, a cultural touchstone, and, yeah, a reflection of our own obsession with the dark side of humanity.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Lolori Mansion. But like I said before, the conversation doesn't have to end here.
Right. I hope our listeners are inspired to dig into those sources, and explore this story for themselves. It's a wild one. What gets me is how the Lolori Mansion, it's like become this pop culture thing, a real-life horror story turned into, inspiration for books and movies. Why do you think this story in particular, why does it still have such a hold on us?
That's a good question. I mean, the horror of it all, right? What Delphine Lolori did, it's just so awful. It taps into those deep-seated fears we have. The cruelty, the darkness, all that.
Yeah, it's got it all, doesn't it? Beautiful setting, evil villain, unspeakable acts, and then the ghosts, of course. Classic horror story material.
And because there's still so many unanswered questions, it leaves room for interpretation, right? Writers and artists, they can fill in the blanks, explore those themes of evil and retribution and how the past never really goes away, all through their own lenses.
But we can't forget, this isn't just made up for entertainment. This really happened. Real people suffered and died there.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the more sensational aspects, the ghost stories. But the real tragedy is those people who were tortured and killed. They weren't just characters. They were real people with lives and families.
It's important to remember them, their stories, not just as part of a ghost story, but as examples of resilience, of the human spirit enduring even the worst imaginable things.